Hi, I'll just introduce myself quickly. I'm Nancy Norris. I am the Senior Director of ESG and Digital Trust at the Ministry of Energy, Mines and Low Carbon Innovation. Erin and I are going to be talking today about digital trust and digital trust solutions. In my project in particular is about sharing sustainability information between the government and mines in the province.
Thanks, Nancy. And my name is Aaron Unger. I'm the director of the Digital Identity and Trust Program with as an arm of Citizen Services with the Government of BC, where Nancy's project deals with organizational wallets and organizational data. Our project deals with individual data and personal data. So thanks for coming out today, everybody. It's nice to see a big crowd in the room. You can see behind me a couple of our main groups that we work with. Nancy and I leaned into this a little bit, but BC Digital Trust is part of the Ministry of Citizen Services, and then Energy and Mines Digital Trust is part of Energy, Mines and Low Carbon Innovation. One of the main things that our team is working on, and I'll talk about this in a little bit, is we have a product in the App Store, it's in the Google Play Store, and it's in the App Store as well, is something called the BC Wallet. And I'm going to get into some of our use cases. We have 3 live use cases between Nancy and I right now, but if we look at what we're doing, we are providing value to BC citizens through things like eliminating the need for username and password. So traditional access to systems is granted by remembering the username and password, and how many of us in the room have 50 or 100 username password combinations for 50 or 100 different services? And we have a password manager and we have things we have to remember, things like that. So one of the things that we're able to do today with the BC Wallet and our technology is allow people access to systems and services using their data and in a secure, confidential manner. What we're really working on is empowering people and businesses to easily and securely prove who they are online and in person. Our tenets revolve around governance of the ecosystems we're building, communicating confidentially, and preserving privacy for individuals in the process. Privacy for individuals and organizations in the process. 4 main principles we work through are confidentiality. That's things like connections between organizations not being privy to third party, including the government. When I started on the BC Wallet project about a year ago, I had worked on other big projects in BC government, one chiefly in mines. And the first day I walked in and I went to our product owner and I said, I want analytics on who's using the wallet and what they're doing and where they're going and all these sorts of things, right? Very like ignorant question. And my product owner was like, no, we're not going to do any tracking of the wallet. We know how many downloads it gets in the App Store. We talk to users. We see the reviews in the App Stores, but we do not track who uses it, when, or where. So one main thing that our wallet users can be assured of is they have confidentiality. Next one is authenticity. So behind the wallet technology is significant security to ensure that people know they are dealing with who they're dealing with and that the credentials in the wallet are authentic. So we can talk about this maybe a little bit at the end if anybody has some curiosity, but we go to great lengths to ensure that we have features like app attestation, that the credentials in one wallet cannot be mimicked or replicated in another wallet, things like that. So that people interacting with our verifiable credentials know that they are authentic. The next thing is privacy preserving. We ensure that the users using credentials can transfer data and in a safe, secure way, and only the data they need to send. For example, one use case we're exploring right now is digital age verification. Having a credential in your wallet that has your birth date does not mean you have to share your birth date to somebody who needs to know you're over 19. All they need to know is that you're over 19, right? They don't need to know your date of birth. They don't need to know your address, anything like that. So we have proof requests built in to ensure that you can preserve your privacy while sharing necessary data for online and in-person interactions. And then the last thing is efficiency. And the joke on our team internally is we want the wallet to be a delightful experience. But we want people to get value out of using the services that we provide. We don't want people to have another app on their phone, a third or fourth wallet, and we don't want people to be slowed down in the processes they're going through online or in person. We promote open data, transparency, accountability, innovation, and allowing people to make informed decisions about their data, what they do with it, and where they go with it. So one of the terms we use internally is decentralized identity. We have a partnership with Service BC and BC Registries to issue a person credential to individuals. Those individuals then own their data and they can take it to whatever service they like. So I just mentioned the person credential. How many people in the room were aware we had a live in production person credential in BC? A couple? We've worked with Service BC and leveraged the BC Services Card app. How many people have the BC Services Card app if you're from BC? We've leveraged that verification process, and I'll talk about this a little bit more tomorrow, to issue digital credentials, which allow people to represent themselves online and in person. We're also working with, and we'll launch in the next couple of weeks, digital business card. We've worked with BC Registries, and we're going to do phase 1 of that project. Sole proprietors can go to BC Registries and issue a digital business card to allow them to go to, our first use case will be City of Vancouver, and apply for a business license. We're also talking to other verifying parties for that. Now, I've talked about access a little bit leading into this, but a couple of the more exciting things we can do with digital credentials is, yes, we can allow people to access services, but we can also talk to legislative bodies about issuing credentials. So under legislation in BC, Service BC has control over issuing that person credential. We have another credential that's live right now. I think a few people might have heard of it as the Law Society credential for lawyers in BC. The Law Society is legislated to issue the lawyer credential. Any party in BC, for example, if we went to APEGS and talked about engineers, if we went to Technical Safety BC and talked about tradespeople, things like that, we want to work with different organizations about who can get credentials and who is legislated to provide those. So we can work with different groups about issuing credentials as well. The next thing we can talk about on our map is signing. I also like to refer to this as attestation. You could, and we don't have any use cases about this yet, but we're working with legal right now and working towards the ability to essentially sign a document or issue attest to something using your person credential. Here's my person credential. I'm Aaron Unger. I digitally have provided my credential to say, yes, this was me. And then the last one, and this is, Nancy and I often do this demo. Well, we can provide it after. It takes about 2 seconds, but we have secure peer-to-peer connections to allow for messaging between organizations and people, or people and people once they've made a wallet connection. And what's really exciting about that, and I will say when I started with our team, I was like, well, I don't need another messaging app on my phone. That's not something I'm asking for. What's really exciting about this feature is once I've established a connection with somebody, it cannot be mimicked or intercepted. So that confidentiality thing I talked about a few slides ago. How many people here get countless emails that are spam and phishing into their Gmail or Hotmail, or everybody, right? The nice thing about this is once I've established a connection with, say, the Law Society of BC, and I'm a lawyer, the Law Society of BC can message me directly, and I know it is them, and they know it is me. We've got an established connection which cannot be mimicked. Now, there's a lot of technology behind what we're doing, and I'll point at Emiliano, who's the PO on our enterprise apps team, and he can dive into that a little bit better than me, but The front end, the flashy parts of what we're building are two main pieces. We've got BC Wallet, which I alluded to earlier. So any of you can go and download BC Wallet right now. You won't have a lot of places to take it yet, but we're working on some new use cases. And then if there's any development teams in the room or if anybody's interested, we have a product called Traction. And they're both, Traction's open source. And again, Emiliano had a big hand in building that, but Traction is essentially the framework that covers all of our issuance, verifying all of the technical pieces that support the BC Wallet are run through Traction. We have a Traction sandbox that we can provide out if anybody wants to play around in the Traction sandbox. It's wiped the 1st and the 15th of every month, that's right? Yeah. Which would allow you to test credentials out, see how it works, play around. We want people to see how this technology works and get comfortable in it. My line on the slide says, Traction is a highly interoperable tool that streamlines digital credential exchange for governments and organizations. If that means anything to you, that's nice. It's fun to play with. And it provides accessibility for people who might not know what that is. And then just a couple more slides, and then I'll hand it over to Nancy. I talked about earlier all the different things we can do with credentials. We've got the two credentials that I highlighted earlier. Is this pointer? Yeah. We've got the Law Society credential here, issued by a Law Society to practicing lawyers in BC. And then we've got the person credential issued by Service BC. Now, our team, as you'll note, is nowhere on this ecosystem. We've worked with them, we've partnered with them, we've provided a common service and a set of open source technology for them to be successful. But this is the Law Society's credential, this is Service BC's credential. They provide it to a lawyer. That lawyer, right now, today, can go to Access to Court Materials, which is an online service operated by Ministry of Attorney General. They can access that site. Previously, they would have had to travel physically to courthouses to retrieve information that they can now retrieve online. So we're saving billable hours, it's cost avoidance, and it's provided a huge value to the lawyers using that. That was the hardest use case to implement. It was the first one. We had to get 3 different organizations to do something and a whole set of users in the middle to adopt a brand new technology. Since we've launched that, we've launched a second use case, and this is live today. In the Okanagan, at a correctional center, there's lawyers that are able to physically access the correction center by providing their credentials, and they provide both of these credentials in one swipe to the correctional facility. The correctional facility sees their photo, sees that they're a practicing lawyer, sees their first name, last name, and they're provided access to the facility. Now, that doesn't seem like it's amazing. We all can access facilities already. But what we do know in that case is that the lawyer, as of that moment in real time, is a lawyer in good standing. The Law Society hasn't revoked their credentials, so we know there's no fraud. We know there is authenticity because nobody else can hold those 2 credentials at the same time. And the correctional facility itself actually saves time. They previously had to phone the Law Society of BC every time somebody showed up and say, hey, is Nancy Norris a lawyer, yes or no? And they'd say, yes. Okay, can I provide her access to the facility? Yes, okay. And the really great thing about this, we did have to do governance work, obviously, to get that off the ground. But the technology implementation, it was the purchase of an iPad. Our accessibility folks had to do work to get the wallet to work on an iPad, which was totally fine. We had to work with the correctional facility to make sure they had governance in place, but the technology implementation was just a tablet. Now we have a couple more use cases going live again this year. We're working with the same 2 sets of credentials and launching 2 more use cases. Every time we launch a new use case, every lawyer gets more and more value out of the credentials they already have. Nothing actually changes for this lawyer in the center. They just get more places to take their card. And the example I always use is like a points card in your wallet. I've got 10 points cards for 10 different grocery stores. Imagine if I could just make my life simpler. Okay, the last couple of things I wanted to highlight is our work on OrgBook BC. Is anybody aware of OrgBook and what it does? It's a really wonderful project. It's been live for a couple of years, but it's a searchable public directory of information from BC registries. So it's openly available. I've hit it twice on other projects in my past to provide a really great value when I want to know what businesses are, which businesses are which. We recently added the OrgBook API to the DataBC catalog and want to make this information discoverable and open. We want it out in the world. It's extremely valuable if you're trying to figure out what organization is which and some basic information about them. And you can talk to myself, or I'm going to put Emiliano on the spot, because I'd probably direct you to him anyways, how you could hit the OrgBook API and gain business data. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Nancy.
Thanks. Is it up?
Down.
Down. Great. Thanks. So the project that I lead is taking the amazing technology that Aaron and his group have been building and implementing, and the use cases that we have been developing in the Energy and Mines Digital Trust are around organizational identity, in particular enabling mines in BC to prove out their sustainability performance and the fact that they're permitted in BC through these digital credentials. And what we found working with multiple different stakeholders is that this allows for efficiency of data exchange for the companies. It also increases trust and security. It's an interesting use cases are interesting because the data is already publicly available, but the fact that the credentials are issued by trusted authorities, such as the BC government, or a certifier of a performance certification for sustainability, it adds an additional level of trust in the information that's being exchanged. There are a lot of, in particular, supply chain tracing solutions where the whole garbage in, garbage out problem is a real factor, and greenwashing is a real factor, in that companies inflate their sustainability performance, or it's sort of a communications exercise for them. With these digital credentials that are issued by a government or issued by an accredited auditor of sustainability, it adds a level of trust in the information that's being exchanged. And then there's a really interesting functionality of these credentials around the balance between privacy and transparency. So another project that I work on that I will be talking a little bit about here uses verified credentials for supply chain tracing. So especially in the mining industry, supply chains are very long and they're very complex. And it's quite difficult to get the suppliers in the midstream to provide information about their sustainability performance, not necessarily because they're operating in a non-sustainable way. I mean, that might be the case, but that's not the barrier. The barrier is that there's commercial sensitivity about who they're buying from and who they're selling to. So they don't actually want to disclose all of that data along the supply chain. With verified credentials, the selective disclosure function that Aaron was talking about allows companies to provide pieces of data from their credential without disclosing all of the information. So it's kind of like if you go to the bar, you want to be able to get in if you're over 19, but you don't want to provide your birth date or your address. It's the same kind of concept with supply chain tracing. These companies want to be able to provide data that's verified about their sustainability performance, but they don't necessarily want to say that they bought the downstream product from, or sorry, the upstream product from this smelter, and they don't want to have to say that they're selling it to this manufacturer, because that's actually a commercial sensitivity issue for them. So this is our current state ecosystem. So Aaron was talking about the lawyer ecosystem. This is the ecosystem for mining that we've been developing. So you can see on the left-hand side, those logos, those are the issuers of the credentials. So one of them is my ministry. We are legislated to issue today Mines Act permits to operate in the province to mines. And with that permission is a whole host of different laws that the mine has to follow around their sustainability performance, like how they deal with their tailings, how they deal with water usage, their carbon emissions, on and on and on. So having a legislated body issuing a permit to a mine as a digital credential implies all of these different regulations that they have to follow. At the same time, we've set up two different environmental auditing companies, EnviroChem and PwC, to issue sustainability performance certification. So we've been working with the Mining Association of Canada. They have a sustainability certification that's pre-existing this type of technology. It's called the Towards Sustainable Mining Protocol, and it has 9 different areas of sustainable performance that are measured by the mines on an annual basis. Every 3rd year, they have to get those reports audited, and every year they have to submit them to the Mining Association of Canada in order to continue to have membership with the organization. So what we've done is we've created a digital credential version of that sustainability report, and we've set up the auditors to be able to issue to these 2 mines. And then the mines are able to share that information with the Mining Association of Canada as digital credentials. Oh. There we go. Okay. So, oh, wait a minute. I'm pressing the wrong button. That's working on a digital project. Whenever you have technology hiccups, it's always extra embarrassing. So this is the project I was referring to before. Because of the work we're doing in BC, we were invited to lead a project with the UN, with the UN CFACT, which is an entity that creates digital standards for trade. And so they're very interested in the work that we're doing because it's quite a low-cost, easy-to-implement way of enabling supply chain traceability. There are a number of existing solutions that where companies are being asked to push all their data to one supply chain solution. This is never going to scale. The model that we're piloting and now in production with in BC is allowing entities to choose what provider they want to use for their digital wallet and having verified credentials that are interoperable with any different solution. And that allows operators along a supply chain to stand up their own wallet and immediately be able to issue, hold, and verify these credentials. So we are working with the UN, and through that process, working with different technology firms and with different mining actors, supply chain actors around the world to create standards, protocols, and guidance for how different countries and different actors along mining supply chains can participate using this technology. And it's all going to be openly available. It's UN IP. It's so it'll be provided to any and all who want to use this the information to interact with each other in this way. These are the findings from a previous project that this UN group had done, and one of the reasons why they asked us to work with them on it. So they did a similar project using blockchain for garment and footwear supply chain traceability. And what they found were a number of different learnings. Centralized solutions, they don't scale. There's 1 million pilots for them, but they don't actually take that next step into scaling with big pickup from multiple different actors around the world. It's very difficult for some countries. Some actors are more digitally invested than others. So you have to have a solution where it works. You can sort of use paper-based as well as digital to map information along a supply chain. This technology allows for that. The commercial sensitivity piece I spoke about before. And trusting claims, so having governments and certifiers issue claims. We have a pilot that's working in the Congo on cobalt. Another way of verifying claims is to have multiple actors be able to go and issue data and credentials at an exact moment to verify one another, that there isn't child labor or forced labor practices taking place at that moment at the mine. So there's many different ways in which this technology is enabling better practices along supply chains. I think I'm pretty close to time here, so oh, do I? Okay, great. So these are all the different sub-working groups that we're focusing on. There's a traceability, so the technical side of it. There's the sustainability vocabulary. So when you have a decentralized system, you need data standards and you need protocols in order to ensure that everyone is able to interoperate with one another. So those are the two big main pieces. Then we also have a legal group that is looking at the legality of what we are proposing. And then we're doing some implementation pilots. I already spoke about the cobalt. We're doing a copper implementation with copper sourced from BC, and then a lithium implementation with lithium sourced from Australia. And this project is completely open to anyone who would like to participate. So if you're interested in learning more about it, you're welcome to come chat with me after or get in contact with me through LinkedIn. Great. All right, so these are the various different stages of adopting digital trust technology. So the first, and it's an adoption playbook that Aaron's group created, and it something that my team has been working our way through. And so the alignment is the first stage around shared goals. The discover is when you develop a use case together with your partners. So really trying to figure out what is that data that needs to be exchanged, who is the authority who can issue the credential, who is going to be the holder of the credential, and then most importantly, who wants that data. Because if you don't have an entity at the end of that chain that wants the information, then it's great that you can hold a digital credential in a wallet, but it doesn't have as much value. Then there's the trial stage, which is developing and testing of the technology and the credential schema that's been developed. And then the final stage is the scaling stage, when you've implemented in production a wallet and all the entities are set up technically, and they also you have agreement on the information that's being exchanged in the credential format. And from there, you're at the point that the lawyer use case is at, where you start finding multiple different entities that want to consume that data and setting them up so that there's more and more value for the holder of the credentials.
Way better than I would have done.
Yeah, there we go.
So it didn't look like we had any questions online, but do we have any questions in person? We have like 2 minutes.
I might have missed it. I'm curious, when you're issuing a credential to the organization, how does that work, getting the credential from the broader organization to ultimately, I guess there's a person carrying the device? Or can you just say a little bit about what that looks like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's the wallet, the personal wallet that Aaron's team is working on. For us, we are actually working with partners that have organizational enterprise services that can consume the credential. So it's like a wallet, but it's a wallet for an actual business. So, for example, one of the mines we work with is called Hudbay. They have an organizational wallet that is like a service that you would, any other sort of data service that you log into in the cloud, and that can receive the credential. Yeah, they do, this point, there's a login for that service. I think at some point, there's going to be a verified credential that allows you to get into the system, but right now, it's still a login process to get in.